Welcome, everybody. Spin&Go Coaching Week 1. Type in that we are live now. Try refreshing in Chrome if you do not hear anything. One of my favorite comic strips, Dilbert, in one episode, Dogbert is manning the tech support for the company. And anytime somebody calls up, he always gives the same advice, which is shut up and reboot, which may not be the most kindly phrased, but restarting anything, refreshing things always works pretty awesome. And somebody else was the first one to give them this coaching, but now I always type it. I type in that try refreshing in Chrome. It's usually pretty good advice. So let's see. Calling us live indeed. Welcome, Tony PMM. Chili Pops is on. Great to see you, Chili. Kavervi, yes, I am talking. So this is pretty sweet. A lot of people on already, and we're going to talk about Spin&Goes today. And before we do that, I'm going to give a little story. This story will be relevant, believe it or not. And so I told the story once in a blog, at least part of the story, but I still can't hear anything. Okay. KVRV, try pulling up the link in coaching info box in Chrome and then refreshing browser should work. Hey Karaman AAKK, great to have you. So I was saying I had the story. So I was contacted by someone who lived in the same state as I did about 6 years ago, the state of Maryland. Welcome, Katie. And he was a novice to poker, and he had won a free roll on Full Tilt to play in this game show Face the Ace. And it was where people were picked to play against pros, and he was a little bit nervous about this because he had extremely little poker experience. And as a result of that, he wanted to follow basically a system. Now, this guy's background was that he was a trader. Okay, he traded in the financial markets. And he was telling me about discretionary versus systems trading, and he wanted a system to follow exactly. So even though it started with a relatively deep effective stack, I believe 100 blinds, I gave him a shove-fold strategy. It started off with long ball, but not quite shove-fold, and I gave him a shove-fold strategy to play poker. Now, he played the game show this way, and I taught him the strategy, and he ended up not following the strategy, and he busted very early. But with that said, he would have gotten clobbered if you played a more conventional small pot strategy. Now, meanwhile, if I had been coaching the pro, not that the pro would necessarily have come to me, but if I had been coaching him, I would have given him the exact opposite advice. I would have told the pro that you want to limp in a lot, you want to play small pots, small raises, and take advantage of significant post-flop mistakes that his opponents might make. And the reason why I bring up this story is because one of the critical concepts in poker is this idea of a game plan. And the game plan is going to be what your general strategy is in a tournament, in a cash game, in any kind of format that you're playing. And so I'm going to give you guys the game plan for Spin&Goes in a bit, but first we have a couple of more preliminary concepts to go through. And we'll go through also some examples that are more general to poker before we get right into spins. So the other concepts I want to talk about are hand reading. And what hand reading means is you use all actions your opponent has made thus far in the hand to come up with a range of hands that they're likely to be on. Okay, so in poker we're not usually coming up with soul reads our opponent exactly has pocket fives, although in some cases players are able to do that, but we're coming up with a range of hands, which is all possible holdings that they're likely to have. And so we'll look at this deductive process of hand reading to determine what our opponent is likely to have. And the last concept is adaption. And adaption means that whatever game plan we have, based on what our opponents are actually doing, we change our strategy, adapt to what we're seeing, and come up with a new game plan on the fly. So let's look at a couple of examples of that. Unshape wants to hire a palm reader if he's not good at hand reading. Man, that'd be awesome. Wouldn't it be cool to be one of those people who can read palms and know what people are thinking. Some people say that that's not actually, you can't actually do that, and there are just tricks. But who knows? I think it'd be pretty sweet either way. So let's look at a couple examples of that. All of the subsequent content will be from Spin&Goes, but because, like I said, these are general poker concepts, I'm actually going to give a couple of examples of these concepts from another format, just from an MTT. So let's take a look at that. And you guys should be seeing my screen, by the way. Right now you should be seeing a poker tracker replayer. And so first, let's talk about game plan and adaption, okay? So early in MTT with deep stacks, a couple of possible game plans that people are going to have. One is they think they're the best player at the table. They're going to get involved in a lot of pots and look to, again, take advantage of weaker players with deep stacks. Okay, so some players are going to have that game plan. Others are going to wait until they have strong hands, that they are able to come into the pot with a pre-flop edge, and that is going to be their game plan, okay? Not to play unless they have some kind of strong hand. Others are going to wait until the blinds get higher and they can play more shove fold poker. So those are examples of different game plans people are going to have. Now here's an example of adaptation from a game plan, okay? We've seen so far that in this game, Cyber Raver is open 2 or 3 times early. So maybe this guy here, Mr. Andrew, we see that he has kind of tight stats. Some of you guys might not be as familiar with these stats. We'll get to them later on in a subsequent week. But either way, let's say that his game plan is he was going to play very tight, and he was only going to enter the pot with a premium hand and look to take advantage of having a pre-flop edge to get involved in a pot. Now he sees this guy to his right is playing most hands. Okay, this guy's opening, let's say, half of every hand so far, and he adapts. He says, look, you know, I don't actually need a premium hand. If I have a hand like Ace-Jack, that hand does very well against the range of hands that this player is opening, and so I can now start playing more hands in position and 3-betting him, that is re-raising pre-flop more often as a result of the fact that he is raising a lot of pots. So that would be an example of adaptation. Now let's take a look at an example of hand reading. Okay, so hand reading requires that, again, we see what our opponent has done on at least one street. Okay, so here, we're going to do this together as an example, okay? Without having too much information, this is going to be the guy we're interested in. You see this guy, Den Tuvenir? Okay, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but whatever. Based on 2 or 3 actions he makes in this hand, we're going to try to put him on a range of hands, or maybe even one specific hand together. Okay, so you guys join in with me on this. Okay, so he re-raises to 250 pre-flop. He gets 2 calls, and he checks the flop, and he checks the turn. Okay, so at this point, we have only seen 3 actions from him, but we have enough information to really start narrowing down his range. ASK2 off is a favorite versus any 2. Yes, Tony, and thank you for the nice words. Limp calling with King 2's offsuit can definitely be pretty sweet. So you can always, you know what, if you flop, let's say the flop comes deuce, 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 and you have King deuce off, you're going to be sitting pretty in that game. So I agree with that. So what does this guy have? We have a couple of possible answers typed in, and anyone else feel free to type in their answer, and I'm going to give you my thought process, my hand reading, my brilliant hand reading for this hand. So basically here's what we're thinking, okay? The first thing is that he re-raised pre-flop. Now, I do not think that he is going to have done this with a wide range of hands. And the reason why is because the effective stack is deep. We'll talk more about what effective stack is surely, but the point is these guys all have a lot of chips in front of them relative to the blinds. And he's out of position, and so as a result of all that, probably he's going to need a very strong hand to do that. So at this point we think that he's, a lot of players are going to be in a range of something like jacks or better, ace king, some kind of premium hand. Now when he checks the flop, we're not expecting that, okay? If he has a high pocket pair, he's probably going to bet, okay? He's not going to give a free card here. He's going to want to get value. And if he was still playing with a hand like top set, then quite probably he would then bet out the turn. So what this guy is saying, what we can read into it, is that he had a premium hand pre-flop and now he doesn't like the flop. So what hands fall in that category? By far the most common hand that we expect him to have here is ace king. So unshape, you win. Macarixes, you win. Tatiana, you win. And that's incredible, okay? Just based on 3 actions, Katie, you win. Kierman AAK, you win. People who said ace queen suited, that's close enough. He could definitely have ace queen as well. There's slightly more chance that he would flat ace queen pre-flop. But just based on seeing 3 actions, a bunch of us came to the same conclusion, which is that it's very likely this guy has ace king. And so that is one of the things we're going to be doing throughout this course, is trying to improve hand reading, of course in the context of spin and goes. And unfortunately, I don't think we get to a showdown here. But I don't even need a showdown, alright? This guy, you know what, I feel it in my blood. People who said ace queen suited, in general, you could very well be right. He might have ace queen, but I'm telling you, without even seeing his hand, I'm so reading this guy, he had ace king, so just trust me on that. Chili Pops, you're right, so there we go. So that's the idea behind hand reading. So I hope you guys understand the concepts of game plan, hand reading, and adaptation. Any questions, let me know. And the next thing I want to talk about, because Poker Strategy told me to talk about it when they asked me to do this course, is 15 blind play versus 100 blind play. One of the awesome things about Spin and Goes is that the stack size you play with is usually going to be short. It starts off at 25 blinds deep, and for the most part, a lot of it's going to play out somewhere between 10 and 20 blinds. And that is going to make our decision making a lot easier. And let me give you guys a couple of examples of that. We'll use the same game. Like I said, everything else past this, we're going to be in spin and go examples because these are general concepts. We're starting with this, okay? So let's first look at a hand with deep stacks. Everyone has a lot of chips relative to the blinds. And we have this hand here with 6-6. And we're going to see, okay, so I raise with pocket sixes. And here we have 150 blinds in our stack. He 3-bets. Now right here, okay, just from the pre-flop action, this shows how much more annoying it is, or how good it is if you're a great cash player, but for a lot of us how much more annoying it is, let's be honest, if you have a huge stack in terms of big blinds. Because look, let's say this is a spin and go, okay, we start off 25 blinds deep. It's very rare you can stack off with a hand like pocket sixes 25 blinds deep if you're blind versus blind or button versus big blind. So if this were a spin, we open and he 3-bets. If he shoves, we would just call it off. If he 3-bets small, we would 4-bet shove. This would be a really easy hand to play. But now this is a tough hand to play. We're out of position against some guy who could be a good lag. And so this hand basically sucks. Now, the point is know what happens on the later streets, but we may as well finish what we started. Here is another hand reading example. When this guy checks back the flop after 3-betting pre, my first thought here is that he has a hand like pocket kings. That's a common thing. When he checks back the turn, I would definitely expect that if he had kings that he would bet at this point. So now this looks like maybe king queen that he was pot controlling and now has a gut shot. And I could actually very well bet out the river for value. But I end up checking and check calling because now at this point he's not really repping anything. And he has pocket queens, so I was wrong about his turn action. It made a lot of sense on the flop. I would expect him to bet the turn. But anyway, the main thing here is that at this effective stack, the decisions are a lot more difficult. But now let's take a look at a shorter stacked example from later in this game. Okay, so here we are. Let me just pull this up. Okay, so here's an example. Now the stack size we're working with is about 15 blinds, and so this is a lot easier. It doesn't mean that it's totally trivial. There are different lines I could take here, okay? So I could open shove profitably, even though the risk reward is pretty poor here. But I'm not going to fold. We can process of elimination, okay? So the reasonable lines here, we're not going to raise and then call it off. So pretty much the likely things that we can do are we can either open shove, and if I was a bit shorter I often would, and if not, because this guy also has tighter stats, again, don't worry if you don't know what these stats mean, I elect to just raise fold. So that's a relatively simple decision, okay? I lose the pot, but that's not the point. The point is I made a relatively simple decision. Okay, so here I have like 14 blinds, and I just shove the pocket three. It's not the most elegant, but profitable. And so these are going to be much easier spots with, say, 15 blinds compared to playing with 100 blinds. Oh man, I lose the flip. That's part of poker, so that's cool. Looks like everyone is trying to problem solve. I very much appreciate everyone who's trying to help out Caro, who is trying to get on. So thanks, guys, for doing that. And stream isn't working if I turn off ad block. So anyway, I'm just going to do you guys problem solve. And again, I very much appreciate those who are trying to help out, those attempting to get into the coaching. So that's the difference between 15 blind play and 100 blind play. And we have a couple of questions and comments. Unshape writes, better room for mistakes to be made, so learn deep stack poker. Yes, that's entirely correct, okay? If you're a beginner player, in the future you would definitely want to learn to play with deeper stacks, maybe other games besides Hold'em, but learning with short stacks, okay, few chips relative to the blinds is a much easier thing to learn if you are a newer player compared to deeper stacks. 3B14. Sorry, Yakuza, I'm not following that comment. Deep stack tourneys are slow, not so good for the hourly win rate. That's true, Tony, but they're fun and they're profitable, and so it just depends on what kind of thing you're into. KK is better turn bet than QQ. QQ blocks Q10, the most likely draw. That is a sophisticated point, and I agree with it, so nice point there in shape. I would still bet the turn if I were him for what it's worth. Kelegnev 12, why not min raise full with the pocket threes? The reason for that is because pocket threes are not a good raise fold candidate. They don't have blockers, and so pretty much my choices there with 14 blinds and threes are usually going to be to open shove or to fold, and it is a profitable open shove. If we were going to raise fold a hand, we would rather do that with a hand like, for example, ace deuce offsuit, that at least has the blocker compared to pocket threes. If we did main raise the threes also, we would usually have to call it off because we would be priced in. So good question. So next thing I wanted to talk about, any examples? As always, let me know. Is explain how to calculate the average price. Well, as you guys can tell, I've been given things to talk about in this coaching, but they're important things to talk about and good things for us to go over. So Kelegnev with 14 blinds is a profitable open shove pocket threes, and the answer to that question is yes. Tony, you can take a break 5 minutes before the hour. So there we go. So let's talk about how to calculate the prize pool in a spin and go. Now, what we're going to do is first look, okay, so here, I've used this cool thing, spinning. It's not spinning. See, I'm thinking of Spin&Goes, and I see the word snipping, and in my mind I put it as spinning. So I guess I have some dyslexia or something. But I've taken a screenshot, okay, and all this is saying is if you play a $1 spin, then you'll get a 12,000 times multiple, so a $12,000 prize pool, 3 times in a million, etc. And what we can do is use a little basic math and Excel in order to go from this to the average prize pool per game. And I want to go through that process with you guys, so let's do this. Now, I am really cheap. And what that means is that instead of actually buying Excel, I use this Margito program called LibreOffice. But LibreOffice works really good. And so we're going to do this in LibreOffice, and I'll walk you guys through the process, okay? So we're going to have, I think you guys can see this, right? Yeah, I have this layered windows thing checked, which means you guys can see this thing if I put it on top of another window. Okay, so we're going to have a few columns here. First one is prize pool. Next one is probability. And next one is going to be contribution toward average prize pool. Okay, so first let's fill out the first column, okay? And then I'll show you guys how this is all going to work. Don't worry if you don't understand so far. Okay, so the first prize pool here, these are the prize pool multipliers. So a multiplier of 12,000 in a $1 spin is going to be a $12,000 prize pool, $240 prize pool, $120 prize pool, etc. So we get the different prize pools. 6, 4, and 2. Let's do this with a larger font. This font is so small. Let's make the font like huge. 10. What if I made it 80? Is 80 going to be way too big? Yeah, 80 is way, way too big. Okay, let's do 20. Here we go. If you're asking a question I'm not answering, I apologize for that. Let me just do this and then I'll get back to any other questions. So we're told the probabilities, and I'm going to use this little trick here. I'm going to go into Notepad and I'm going to type in 1 million, or as Austin Powers, not Austin Powers, Dr. Evil would say 1 million. And so I'm going to copy this, and this is going to make things a little bit quicker for me. And now I'm going to type in the probability. Okay, so when it says frequency 3 in a million, that means the probability is 3 in a million. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to, so that means I would just type in Excel equals 3 divided by, and I will paste in a million. And that is the probability of hitting that prize pool. So this is going to be, yeah, let me make this smaller so you guys can see both windows at once. Here we go, I think. Okay. So next probability equals 50 over a million equals 100 over a million, aka 10,000, equals 1,000 over a million, 1,000, equals 5,000 over a million, equals 75,000 over a million, equals 183,653 over a million. Oh, how do they come up with these wily numbers? And the remaining times we have 735,000 over a million. And now we have contribution toward average prize pool. And to do that, we multiply these two together. Okay, so what that's saying is that, let me get all of these first and then we can say what this is saying. Okay, that's saying is that if you play a $1 spin and go, the possibility of getting a 12,000 times multiple accounts for 3.6 cents of that. In other words, if you were guaranteed somehow that you would never hit the 12,000 times prize pool, what that would mean is that you would lose 3.6 cents per game. So what we can do then is we can get the total, and the total is just going to be the sum of each one. And so this means that the average prize pool in a $1 spin and go is going to be $2.79. Okay, it's formatted to have this cool currency thing here. $2.79. If you play a $1 spin and go, every single time the prize pool is going to be either $2, $4, $6, etc., up to $12,000. But on average, the prize pool is going to be $2.79. So if there are 3 players putting up $1 each, then you might see where's the extra money. The extra money is the rake. Okay, and the rake here is going to be 21 cents, so $3 minus $2.79. The difference there is 21 cents. We divide that by 3 and we get 7 cents. So that means 0.07 rake per person. Now, the cool thing about that is we can test whether we've done that correctly because stars gives the rake. And sure enough, if you look up the rake for a $1 spin, you can do that right now and it'll say 7%. And so we have just independently verified that 7% figure. So that makes us pretty awesome. Okay. With all of that said, let's now go back to questions. A lot of questions about Katie and what she's up to, which is awesome. Katie, fill us on. Katie, if you want to come in, Katie's in the other room. If you want to come in, feel free to just jump on and do this with me. That'd be pretty sweet. 5 minutes are too little. Yes, it is. A good point in life in general. A circumcision tool. Yes, next time I'm going to be saying that. Knit alert, very true. LibreOffice is awesome. Well played, Tony. If Excel is free, I did not know about that. That is cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. I didn't get the prize pool of $12,000 yet. Have patience, my friend, said all you will. As for the weird numbers, they tweak the frequencies of 2x and 4x only in order to make the rake exactly n%, with n being an integer. You guys can tell that Tony has a math background, but he is exactly right. Aid Bruno, don't forget the prizes for second and third and the higher level spins. That's a very good point, but the thing is, the prize pool already factors those in. We're not doing first place, we're only doing the prize pool, and so we're not concerned for this calculation with the distribution of those prizes. Good question. 7, and Tony says that as well. 7% rake in ones, yes. The $1 ones only go up to 10K, that's true, but the prize pool is 12K. To be precise, multiply that 0.036, 0.012, etc. by here's ITM over 100. Yes, again, this is just for the average prize pool. I won the jackpot of $1,000 a year on Twister Poker. Congratulations, Kelly. Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty sweet. So yeah, that's the prize pool. I think we're just cranking this through, guys. So that's pretty awesome. Any questions on that, let me know. What do I talk about next? Next, they've written show 4 to 5 hands and ask users which player is playing in position. I won't do that. Now, this is where I've got to warn you guys, okay? For some of you guys, you're very new and this will be interesting. For some of you guys who are more familiar with it, this might be pretty basic. Can I just take a poll out of interest? Who here in this coaching is very new to poker? If you are very new to poker and you want to type it in, I'd be curious to know, and that's just so I know like how much time to spend on this kind of thing. But I am going to go ahead and do that, and I won't do too long on that. For you guys who already know this code, don't worry, I won't spend too long on this. But just to make sure everyone's on the same page, we are going to quickly do that. So here's just some random spin I played a while ago, a few weeks ago actually. And so there are 3 positions in a spin and go, okay? First one is the button. The button is the player in position on all post-flop streets. The second is the small blind, who's going to be out of position, worst position on all post-flop streets. And the big blind, who acts last pre-flop, and then post-flop will act after the small blind if he's still in the hand, but must act before the button. Okay, so position is power in poker. It's an old cliche, but it's very true. And so button, small blind, big blind. Let's go through a couple more examples of that. Here, I am the big blind. This player is a small blind, and this guy with the dealer thing is the button. Okay, here I am raising in the small blind, and the big blind defends. I take it down with my tiny C bet. Isn't that awesome? Button folds. Here I am the big blind button, and the big blind shoves. I am not playing, by the way, the sanctioned beginner strategy, which we'll talk about. The point of this is purely to show the positions. We will look at the normal beginner strategy that Poker Strategy is putting up for you guys very shortly. Now let's take a look once we get the heads up. Hopefully I picked a game where I actually make it heads up. Okay, so the very important thing is that heads up, the button and the small blind are the same position. In terms of the poker strategy, spin beginner strategy, there's no button. You can think of there being no button heads up. There's only small blind and big blind. So the player who acts first pre-flop and second on all post-flop streets is the button. Is the small blind, and the other guy is the big blind. So you're small blind, big blind. Next, small blind, big blind, okay? Because he literally has the smaller blind. He literally has the bigger blind. You know, I read recently that in like modern speak, that the definition of the word literally is not literally. But there, when I said literally, I meant actually literally. So I don't know. That's probably not a problem, but I just thought I'd mention that. So any questions on positions, let me know. Again, For you guys who haven't seen it, I'm happy to do that more. For the people who have seen it, it's probably a little bit basic, but very important. Of course, position is everything in poker. I won the $5 1 million spin and go in February, last promo. Wow, that's awesome. Unshaped, there will not be live play today, but we will be going through actual games played with the poker strategy, beginner strategy. My point is that the top multiple adds only about 1.2% of the buy-in to here is winning, so it isn't as vital for the overall ROI as the 2 times to 6 times tourneys are small but very frequent. And yes, that is true. The vast majority of the average prize pool is coming from the low multipliers, which is a very good point. I told that to Lucky Luke, and he was pleasantly surprised because first place is responsible for a huge share of the overall ROI in MTTs. Yes, that is true. Biggest one I've been in was a $5 6K prize. Oh, that's very cool. Colin and Katie, do you think position matters in micro and low stakes? Yes, position matters. There's some things that aren't as true for high stakes or low stakes, but any stakes you play, position is very important. Absolutely. Okay, so we think I've covered all questions, and now let us get to the next topic, which is drumroll. Somebody should be drumrolling. I should have had a YouTube drumrolling thing. That would have been pretty sweet. Show a lot of your own hands and calculate the effective stack size on the fly. So let's do that, and let's actually go back earlier in this game and we'll talk about calculating effective stack size. So effective stack size, this is a definition, okay? Effective stack size is the most chips that you could lose in a given hand, okay? And if the remaining players have you covered, or any remaining player left to act has you covered, then the effective stack size is just your stack. So here, my stack is 500. Both of these guys have 500, and that's the effective stack. Okay, now let's say that we take it from this player's perspective. Here his stack is 540 chips, but his effective stack is 500 chips because that's the most he can lose, okay? Because this guy is 460, I have 500. So let's say, for example, he shoves and I call him. Even if he loses, he only loses 500 chips. He still keeps the remaining 40 chips. And so in the poker strategy, beginner strategy, all of the charts are going to be referring to effective stack. So effective stack is really important here. My stack is 480, his is 570. And also effective stack is before posting blinds, okay? So his stack is 570, and so my effective stack is 480, and his effective stack is 480 because both of us can lose almost 480 chips in this hand. Okay, here's a quiz just to make sure that, let's go forward a few hands, just to make sure all of you guys follow this, okay? So here in this hand, what is the effective stack for this player? Okay, so I know that some of you guys know the answer to this, but anyone can type it in. If you want me to move on from this, then you better type in the answer. What is Ideal 62's effective stack? I'm getting some different answers, which is cool because that means that there is something to talk about and explain here. Okay. So the answers given are 434, 454, 541, 495. Okay. So remember our definition of effective stack is the most you can lose in a given hand. The most he can lose in this hand is 454 chips. Now you might say, well, of course he already has a small blind posted. But the thing is here is before posting anything, okay? So relative to before the blinds are even posted, the most you can lose in this hand is 454 chips. Then there's not a huge difference between 434, 454. A lot of the time the effects of the blinds aren't going to be that significant. The point here is that the answer is not 541 or 551. Important thing here is that, by the way I do with the effective stack here would be 454. If you said 434, it doesn't really matter all that much. The effective stack here is my stack because that's the most he can lose. Kuroman AAKK, how about hand reading and Spin&Goes, or is this too early a lesson? We'll talk about hand reading and Spin&Goes on the post-flop lesson, which will come on a different day, but good question. Okay, and so here in this one, the effective stack for this player is 319. And so from my perspective, I am dealing with an effective stack here of 319 or just under 11 blinds. Okay, to convert into blinds, you just divide by the number of big blinds. So he starts the hand off with 319, so we take 319 divided by 30, and we'll get about 10.6. So the effective stack here is 11 big blinds. Okay, so that is how we calculate the effective stack. Any questions about that? Let me know. And now we will get to our next topic. Show a lot of situations and look up the correct solution according to our charts. So now we're going to talk about the actual poker strategy and how to determine that. So let's go ahead and pull up what that strategy is. Okay. Now, before we go ahead and do that, I want to make a comment here. So there was some discussion, and when I say some discussion, I mean a comment that Tony PMM made saying, and I think, Tony, you may be partially kidding, maybe you weren't, who knows, but that this didn't really represent thinking, you're just following charts. But actually charts are, particularly for beginner players, they're really, really good because what they do is they show you a basic way to play and get a lot of the correct decisions. And this is not going to be, nobody's going to say, I didn't come up with a strategy, but whoever did, I'm sure would be the first person to say that this is not how they would recommend that an advanced player play. No advanced player would play this way. But it's a surprisingly effective way to get started. And we'll see that when we look at actual games, we're going to see that you can absolutely play and win games and hold your own playing this strategy. And as you progress, you're going to learn ways to improve on it and learn ways to start using more and more of your own discretion and poker knowledge. It's just a basis, okay? So let's take a look here. Are these lessons recorded? Yes, I think it will come out on the videos page, most do. Chili Pops, if we were playing for 11 blinds effective, we play using the Nash chart 1-on-1. You would use the chart, yes, if it were heads up, you would. So you would use the chart that specifies, for example, that we're the big blind and the button has entered the hand. So you would use the relevant one and for that number of big blinds. And we'll look at examples of that. So there are two really important things that I want to point out that are part of the strategy beside the tables. First one, once the effective stack is less than 3 blinds, go all in with any hand. Okay, so effective stack less than 3 blinds, always go all in. Now, as we will see in future lessons, that is not a completely perfect rule. Okay, we're going to improve upon that in the future, but it works really well. Okay, if you simply always did that, sometimes you'd be making a small mistake, but it's much better than being too tight with a 3 blind stack, and it actually works pretty good. Here's the other important rule. There's only one post-flop rule, okay? Which is that because we're playing shove forward pre, the only way we can see a flop is in a limped pot when we are the big blind and we don't have a hand strong enough to shove. And the rule there is if you flop top pair or better, and that top pair is with a 10 or higher, you go all in, and otherwise you check fold. Now, this is not, you know, if you talk with like some great Spin&Go player, they're not going to play anything like that. But as a starting point, it's going to keep you out of trouble and be something that we can build on and develop on. So this is going to be the post-flop rule that we play with at the start. Okay, so before we go to some spin and go examples of what we would do with this chart, we are going to talk about how to read it. So the first two tables are going to be for open shoving. Okay, so what that means is no one has entered the pot. We are the first one in, and the question is, what hands do we shove? So all we do is we look at our hand and we see which of these categories it falls in. Okay, so let's say we're the button and we have Queen 7 offsuit. Okay, so we would look at this here, and the red means if the effective stack is 6 blinds or less, we go all in. And so what we do here is with 6 blinds or fewer, we would shove. Anything deeper than that, we would fold. And so that's open shoving from the button. The next one is if the button folds and we're in the small blind. These are the hands that we shove, and obviously we shove a lot wider because there's only one more player to worry about. So this is small blind open shoving. The next ones are going to be for either 3-bet shoving, which means re-raising pre-flop all in, or for shoving over a limp. So here we're the small blind, the button has joined the hand, which will usually, but not always, mean the button is raised. Button limps, that's fine as well. And so these are the hands that we are going to shove. And the other hands, these hands we always fold, the ones that don't have any color. And so that is how we play from the small blind. And the next one is where the big blind, the button has either limped or raised. In this last one, where the big blind and the small blind has joined the hand, and here you see we shove very wide. Okay, where the big blind and the small blind wants to limp or raise small, we don't believe him. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take his face and we're going to rub it into the dirt. We're going to shove over him so wide, and that's really effective because you know what, people in the small blind don't have anything. There's actually a theorem in poker. Have you guys heard of the A.E. Jones theorem? And A.E. Jones is, what is he? He's like a high stakes cash player or something like that who's been around for a long time. And he has his A.E. Jones theorem, which says nobody ever has anything. Now that is not, as Tony I'm sure would tell you, a mathematical theorem that we can go sit here and prove in my QED, but it's a state of mind theorem, okay? It's a state of mind that don't believe people, put pressure on them. And so I think this last table really exemplifies the A.E. Jones theorem because we just don't believe the small blind in the strategy, and that's actually a pretty sweet thing to, pretty sweet way to go about it. Tony writes, the 3-blind rule is quite perfect, allows you to open a tourney faster when you're going to have a bigger edge most of the time. Yeah, it's another benefit. If you continue playing optimally with 3 blinds, even if you grow your stack, the blinds will be so big by then that you won't be able to exploit anyone. You'll just be flipping. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't, like, let's say, for example, in MTT, I'm not just always open shoving a 3-blind stack or calling it off. But for the most part, yes, I would agree with that. Aid Runo often comes back from spin, less than 3 blinds. It can definitely happen, for sure. So now let's take a look at some examples of how to use this. Okay, so let's go back to this game. Now this is not going to be a game where I actually play with the strategy. We will get, surely, 2 games actually played out in full with this strategy, but for now we're just going to be looking at examples of how to look up the correct answer. Okay? So here with 8-4 offsuit, okay, so the way we would do this here is we would say, let me go ahead and make this smaller. Okay, so this is going to be button 25 blinds, which is our first table. And so we would look up and we would say 8-4 offsuit. Now what you're going to start to learn also is that there are patterns, okay? So pretty soon we're going to see that, well, when we're on the button and we have a junk hand, that those are always going to be folds. So you won't always need to ask the charts what to do because you're going to get used to those patterns, and that's cool. I mean, you'll be following the chart, but the point is you'll already remember the answer. Okay. So next, 10-3 suited. So now we're going to look at our chart, second to last chart, which is we're the big blind and the button has entered the hand. Effective stack here is still 25 blinds, okay, because that's our stack and he covers us. So 25 blind effective stack, you're in the big blind, the button has joined the hand. Okay, so we'll see that with 10-3 suited, that is going to be a fold. So with 25 blinds, some of the worst hands we would shove here would be pocket fours, ace 3 suited, ace 9 off, and king 10 suited. Okay, next, pocket sevens. So here, that's going to be our second chart, which is open shoving in the small blind. The effective stack is our stack because he covers us. And effective stack here is we start the hand off with 480 chips. So that's going to be 24 big blinds. So here with the small blind open shoving, we are going to see that any pair, we're going to open shove up to 25 blinds. All right, any effective stack. And so the correct play here with the sit and go beginner strategy is to open shove. Chili pumps, we will talk about bankroll management next. Good question. I would hate to go all on the button with 25 blinds and deuces in my hand. It's better than folding. Chili, playing the games you can beat, have at least 50 buy-ins for them. There you go. So all good. Points and advice. And so let's take a look at a few more examples of that and then we'll get to the actual games. Okay. So here, ace-8 offsuit, okay? What is the effective stack? Now, this one is slightly more tough because we have two guys with different stacks. But here again, the effective stack is the most we can lose, which is our full 25. If we shove 525 and he calls and we lose, we're going to go broke. So if he had 10 chips fewer, then the effective stack would be 515. If he had 10 chips more, then the effective stack would still be 525. So ace-8 offsuit here. Let's take a look. So button, ace-8 offsuit. Oops, it's the wrong chart here. We're in the button. That's going to be a shove. So the correct play with the beginner strategy is to open shove this, okay? Because we've looked up, this is where the button for us to act. That this is our effective stack, and we have a hand we can shove because it's in blue. So Sura writes, I would raise pre-flop to 2.5 blinds and see about a flop with deuces. See, Citadel, the thing is, I'm not disagreeing with that, but this is a specific, systematic, algorithmic strategy that we will use at the start and then later move on to this more small ball approach that you were talking about. Is it safer to min-raise ace-8 offsuit? Right. It's safer to min-raise it if you're normally playing a small ball game. But if you are playing a shove-fold game, which is much easier to play, then you are going to open shove it, because by definition, shove-fold means you only shove or you fold. Well, unless everybody limps, and you check in the big blind. Okay. So, yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about for going to actual spins is bankroll management. Okay. So bankroll management, we have this guideline here, which is, I thought we had it here. Don't they talk about bankroll management in this? Either way, the I think in another article, bankroll management is discussed, and the guideline given is 90 buy-ins, okay? So you deposit 30 buy-ins. If you go broke, then you can deposit another 30 buy-ins. If you go broke, you can deposit another 30 buy-ins. And so if you are playing spin and goes, like as a professional, as high stakes spins, then all those guys are probably going to have more than 90 buy-ins. But as a beginner, what you want to do is you don't want to put too much money at risk. And so pretty much all that is 90 buy-ins as 30, 30, and 30 is a way to get into it while limiting your losses and having a very good chance to run it up. Okay, so this is not like some mathematically derived bankroll using the Kelly criterion or something like that. This is just a good guideline in order to get you off and running without a substantial possibility of loss, and the majority of the time you will not go broke. I don't plan on this, but why not? Let's take a look here. There's so Poker Dope Variance Calculator. I've talked about this in at least one video here, but for those of you who are interested, you can take a look and you can see how well you're going to do with a buy-in, with a bankroll of a certain number of buy-ins, okay? And don't worry about this if you don't understand it all that much, but let's just go ahead and do one example of this, okay? So what we can say here is we are doing a 3-player spin and go that's winner take all with a $1 buy-in and a 7-cent fee. And let's say that we have a 3% ROI and we play 1,000 of them. Okay, so if we do that, then this one time we played 1,000 of them, on average, because we have a 3% ROI, you're going to make about 32 bucks. And this time we made about $22. And we can see we started off, we lost 6 bucks. And so with this 3% ROI, that the most we were down this one time was 6 bucks. And you can calculate over and over here. This next time we were hardly down at all. If we keep on doing it, we will get to a point, I'm sure, where we start off. So here, this one, we got down, we lost 15 bucks, and you can keep on, you can play around with larger samples. This is an interesting thing to experiment with. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have a 3% ROI with this strategy, but for the most part, 90 buy-ins is going to be a good guideline. Kelly Niev, do we really want to risk 25 blinds with deuces? If we're playing a shove fold strategy, that means that we're risking 25 blinds with anything we play, for example, on hand number 1. And, well, the risk reward is not fantastic. We have the advantages that we're more likely to get action shoving our strong hands, and there's no possibility of people getting a post-flop edge on us. So that is the guideline there. The Kelly BRM guideline is even looser, e.g. you can move up to $3 spins when you have 120 because the low stakes games are so soft, plus you can rebound quickly at the 1s if you run bad at the 3s. Yeah, I mean, well, the strict Kelly is super aggro. I don't think many people play with strict Kelly, but yeah, that's a good point, Tony. My main point was just that this is a guideline. This is not a hard, strict rule. This is just a good way to limit loss and get into the game without too much risk. Does that calculator not assume a $3 prize pool every time and ignore the spin element, which increases risk? Reno, that is exactly correct. Okay, so we have the additional variance from the fact that Spin&Goes have a randomly determined prize pool, and so that's a good point. All I'm just trying to do is show some ways. I don't know, maybe there's another version of this that can model that. If there is, I don't know that. But just a way to look at some of the swings that you might entail playing low stakes spins. But a good point there. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at actual games. Any other questions? Type them in. Otherwise, let's go ahead and let's see. So this is going to be a player who was given the task of actually implementing the strategy. And what we are going to do here is take a look at 1, whether he makes the correct decisions, and 2, how the strategy actually works in practice, okay? So for those of you maybe who have either played a lot yourselves or you watch poker on TV and you say, hey, I don't normally see people who are just shoving all the time, maybe you don't have a clear idea if you actually sat down at the tables and played it out like this, how it would work out. And so now you guys are going to see that firsthand. So let's go ahead and do this here. Okay, so in this hand, we have to look up, and the effective stack is 25 blinds. So we are the button, and the small blind, we are not the button. We are the big blind, and the button has joined the hand. So that's going to be one of our last charts here. And so we see with Queen 9 offsuit, if the effective stack is less than 12 blinds, we can shove. So we can't shove here because the effective stack is 25 blinds. And so what we should do is check, which here it does. And we don't flop top pair, 10s or higher, and so we're just going to check and fold. So here replace this correct. It's great to hear that there's a player who's implemented the strat. What was his EV ITM at the ones and over how many tourneys? So he's implemented it because I asked him to for this coaching. So he played 10 games. Actually, think he did pretty well in them. But this is not a large sample, Tony. So when I say we'll see how he did, I mean in a qualitative sense how this worked out. So Jack 4 offsuit, we're going to have 25 blinds. We're going to look up 25 blinds in the small blind. And we will see that Jack 4 offsuit, we only shove up to 6 blinds. And so we expect hero to fold. 6-3 off. This is one. Okay, so here I wouldn't even look this up because we've already seen for 25 blinds we will not be shoving junk on the button. And so once you've learned a rule like that, you don't have to go back and consult the chart. Okay. So here's an interesting one. We are the big blind and both the button and the small blind have entered the hand. And so in a situation like that, we're going to say we are the big blind and the button has entered the hand because that's going to be tighter, and we should do the tighter of the two in a case like this. So King 5 suited. Here, hero is just going to fold, which is correct. And Jack 8 suited. So here I would have to look at the chart. So we're the small blind, and the button has entered the hand. And so for Jack 8 suited, we cannot shove it up to this effective stack. And so the correct play is going to be to fold. Let's see what these guys have. Massive pot here. Ace 4 off, not good against the full house. Oh man. LOL 10 games. Well, I never said he had played a lot of games, man. I just said he played this for us. Cameraman AAKK, no problem. Tatiana, I have 40.5 ITM on the ones. Wow, that is a very impressive ITM on the ones. What is expected ROI on the ones and threes implementing this strategy? That is a really good question, Kverv. I don't know the answer. I don't know of a way to calculate that theoretically, and I don't know if anyone has a large sample playing the ones and threes this way. My guess would be that it would be pretty much a break-even way to get started. Maybe a little edge at some tables, but as we get on in weeks, you'll definitely get a much bigger edge once we start making modifications to the strategy. Is there a site that tracks stats? SharkScope tracks stats, but I don't think it calculates, tracks accurately for spins. I had an urge to test the strat on FTP Play Money Challenge, but I just don't have so much time and desire. No problem. And there we go. Okay. So no heads up. Okay, so heads up, we're going to be looking at we're the small blind and the button has folded. Okay. So here, King 5 off. We will see that we can shove if the effective stack is less than 12 blinds. Okay, so with King 6 offsuit, we would shove this. At King 5 offsuit, we would shove if we had a stack of 240 or less. And here correctly folds. So King 8, we just saw we would shove here. And he folds. King Queen suited will definitely be a shove. And Queen 6 we check. We do not hit. Remember, we're looking for a top pair of 10x or better. Any ace, we can look at the table and we'll see that'll be a shove. And King Jack will definitely be a shove. We're big blind and the small blind has entered the pot. So let's see, is this correct? So here this is going to be small blind once the button has folded. And we have Jack 7 offsuit. So here we can shove this with a stack of 12 blinds or less. The actual effective stack here is going to be just over 15 blinds, and so here makes a correct fold. King 7, I would have thought the tables would have a shove, but let's take a look. So we're the big blind, and the small blind has joined the hand. So king 7 offsuit is a shove for less than 12 blinds. So this is actually really close, okay? Most of them are going to be fairly obvious, but this is actually very close, okay? So if the effective stack is less than 12 big blinds, 12 big blinds here is going to be a stack of 360. So because of the fact that we are over that, we are more like 15, then Hero folds this. So this is a spot here where, if it's ever really close and you make the wrong decision because of the chart, that's fine. But the important thing is we want to mainly stick with exactly what it is telling us. The concern is that KTU put up the strategy without testing whether it wins it all or not. By testing, I mean playing thousands of games. What does KTU stand for? I should probably know what KTU stands for. But anyway, let me get to that question that Poker Strategy puts it up without testing whether it wins it all or not. As far as I know, Tony, there's no claim by Poker Strategy that this is a strategy made to beat the games. This is a strategy designed to teach people a way to get started effectively in these games and have something to build off of. So I wouldn't recommend that anyone set out with the goal of playing, say, 20,000 games with this strategy. What I would recommend people do is start off playing at the $1 games and learn the basics of spins with the strategy, looking to quickly improve using the future modifications that we're going to go over. So, Tony, if you can point out anywhere where they've said anyone that's part of Poker Strategy has claimed that you will beat the games with this as a long-term strategy, point it out to me, because I would definitely, say, well, where's the proof? But for what it is, I think it's pretty sweet. K-Verb is pretty sure I'll be positive using the strat. I would definitely believe that the one, but if at worst, I think it would be pretty break-even. So hopefully that answers questions. 10-9 suited, this should be a shove here. 9 deuce suited, hero folds. So ace-8 suited should definitely be a shove. We're expecting that at any effective stack, if the small blind enters the pot and we're the big blind, we can shove a suited ace. And in fact, all aces we can shove. So here should go ahead and 3-bet shove. KTU is the Poker Strategy nickname of the author of the strategy. The co-author is Unam. Yes, I know Unam. He's a friend of mine, about German community, German coaches. Very cool. So, yeah, I think for what it is actually pretty good. King 4 offsuit in the... But again, with all the caveats I've given a million times now, not for anything long-term, for beginners, getting used to playing spins, blah, blah, blah. We're the small blind, and we are open shoving, so here the effective stack is now close to 20 blinds again, so we could shove down to King 6 offsuit. King 4 offsuit is in yellow, which means we could shove it up to 12 blinds, which would again be a stack of 360 or shallower. So we shove the King Jack offsuit, and we'll lose that one. Now notice here that even though we lose this game, here it definitely hung in there, and he made it to heads up. He chipped up some, and he only busted when he got it in very good. He got it in as a 2-to-1 favorite approximately. Got bad beaten. If that hadn't happened, he would have had a massive, significant chip lead of 11-4 in this match. So even though we lose this one, I think it worked out pretty good for Hero. Colin, I know this is off topic, but I want to buy a Spin and Go pack. Would you recommend Coffee or Big Hustler? I don't know the answer. to that. I don't know their offerings specifically for spins, so I would look up reviews, see what people say about them. Um, but I don't have an informed enough answer to touch on. It's a good question though. Johnny16, please help. One crucial question. I've Hold'em Manager 2 and seems to be getting too slow. Is PT4 better? PT4 for me doesn't crash as much. I prefer PT4. A lot of people though do prefer Hold'em Manager, so I don't want to say that as an absolute, but for me Poker Tracker 4 has worked very well. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up the next game and we'll check out how that worked out for Hero. Why am I not able to find where to convert history? Here we go. Okay. Ace 3 suited. So let's take a look here. We're going back to the charts. It's a chart-oriented day here. So we're button first to act. Any suited ace and offsuit aces from ace 5 offsuit. So we expect Hero to shove, which he does. Well done, Hero. Okay. It looks like Hero is not the only one playing a shove fold strategy at this table. 9-8 off. Wow, look at this call. I love this. I don't love it in the sense that it's necessarily profitable, but I love it in the sense that it shows a lot of gamble. But see, this is the thing, okay? If you guys play $30 spins, for example, you will definitely find people who spew it off and play crazily. And I can tell you that from experience because I've played a decent number. But it's not super common, right? The ones, if you go ahead and you shove hands that are part of the shove fold strategy, you can absolutely be called by worse hands, even if you're low down on your range for doing that. Okay. So here, Queen 3 offsuit, we are the small blind. And we can shove down to Queen 9 off. Queen 3 off, we would shove up to 12 blinds. So that would mean here at 1020, up to 240 chips, we could shove Queen 3 off. Anything below 240 chips we fold. And don't worry, okay, if you have 240 chips exactly, it doesn't matter. It's not like this is, you know, if you're off by 1 chip, it makes a big difference. So don't worry about that. Okay, so a limp and a check. So let me ask you guys this question, okay? According to the strategy, if the flop goes check, check, what is an example of a turn card that we could play? And if we did play, what would we do? So think about that for a second and type in your answer. So what turn cards, if this flop goes check, check, what turn cards would cause us to now play the hand? So think about that, and see what we can do here. So Tachana says a non-diamond card. Some non-diamond cards, but for example, if the turn is the ace of clubs, we would check fold. CPT Ming writes, if a jack comes, we push. Yes, because then we would have top pair with tens or better. And also if the diamond came, because if the diamond came, we would have better than top pair. At least that's how I read the strategy. So 10-8 off here is shoves. Now this is shoving for 21 blinds. So let's see, is this correct? 21 blinds with 10-8 offsuit? And the answer here is we are going to open shove in the small blind, and we have 10-8 offsuit. And 10-8 offsuit is a shove for up to 25 blinds. Now, you might be a little bit surprised by that fact, but the thing about it is that hands like 10-8 off, 9-8 off, 7-6 suited, these are what we call robust hands, which means that if we get our opponent to fold, that's great, but they tend to have decent equity against a tighter calling range. In other words, if somebody is calling with only relatively good hands, we win decently often and get the suck out with these sort of nice, connected, sexy hands like 10-8 off or 6-5 suited. Yes. Top pair or better. Yes. Okay, so here are shoves. Well done, hero. So here there's no card on the turn. The only way we can play this hand is if we hit runner, eights and or sixes. Ace 9 will be a shove. And yet again, this is a shove where this is for a lot of the chips in play here. This is for if he wins this hand, then he's won. If we won, then we have 840 chips, and we have the chip lead. So once again, the second game, we make it heads up, and we get it all in with the best hand. So even though Hero has lost both of these, he's got heads up, and he's gotten an in good and loss. So relatively effective so far. Next. Okay, ace 9 we know is going to be a shove here on the button for 25 blinds. And look at this, he calls with king 3 offsuit, okay? So this is, one of the power of the strategy is that we're going to take a lot of small pots just by shoving and people folding, and that when we get called, we often actually have a decent winning percent against our opponent. So here we've just taken advantage of a player willing to make a ridiculous call by shoving. Okay, and once again we shove. Now here, this is a spot where once you get better, you're going to see, hey, I can win more on average by raising small. But at the start, we're just going to be shoving hands like this, and we do get action. Unfortunately, we lose the hand. But on balance, we want action when we shove with pocket tens. And a correct shove with ace 3 suited. And we're seeing this theme, okay? So once again, we get called. This is an incorrect call. We get an in good, we lose. So we're getting bad beat a lot, but we are getting an in good, and that's important. The result of the system looks similar to some of my results in the spin and go. Yeah. So it's tough to not run the best, but some of the time you'll make up for that by running really good. All right. Next game. Okay. So Queen Jack suited in these small blinds. Effective stack of 25 blinds. We are the small blind and button is showing the hand. And so Queen Jack suited is up to 12 blinds. And here it does make a correct fold. Now shoving this one, this is actually really close. But according to the chart, it's a fold, so here has made a correct fold. And Jack 10 off on the button. So we look up, these are the offsuit, these are the suited, and we see that while Queen Jack off is a shove, Jack 10 offsuit is going to be a fold. We could shove Jack 10 offsuit if we get up to 12 blinds effective, which would mean that we had 240 chips or less, or we had a big chip lead and both of these guys had 240 chips or less at the start of the hand. Okay, 10-5 suited we fold, 10-8 off we fold. Queen Jack offsuit, I would have thought this is going to be a shove. So Queen Jack offsuit, We're the small blind and the button has entered the hand. And so Queen Jack offsuit up to 12 blinds. So here we actually have greater than 12. We have just under 15 blinds. And so this is a correct fold. And this is a spot where as we go further and further in the course, this would be a spot where I would teach you guys to shove in the future. Okay, so as a basic strategy, folding here is totally fine. And we're going to learn to use our discretion to override certain parts of the strategy. And so this would be a spot where in the future, I'm going to show you guys where it would be better to shove than to fold. How strange, 3 times bad beats something I know very well on Poker Stars. LOL Joker Stars. Extremely high variance is perhaps the biggest challenge in these. Absolutely. Okay, then I'll try my best to get a decent sample. $1 spins till next coaching using this strategy. Let us know how it goes. Awesome. Ace 9, definitely going to be a shove here on the button. So the ones that I'm going through more quickly, these are just ones where based on observation of what we've seen of these tables that we know that they're going to be folds. Okay, another fold. Obviously we're going to shove any pocket pair on the button. Here, once again, the only way we would play this hand is runner-runner. So 10s and or 3s, as well as heart-heart or 4-5 would be the ways we would play this hand. So 8-4 off in the small blind, I believe, is going to be a fold here. And so 8-4 off is a fold. Now remember, at 3 blinds we would still shove it. But here we're going to fold it, which is what Hero does. Well done, Hero. And here we would need a queen to hit on the turn in order to shove. And what we'll notice here is Hero is getting very short, which is fine, but very soon he's going to be at the 3 big blind point. So here, the way we would look this one up on the chart is we are big blind and button has entered the hand. And what's the effective stack? The effective stack is 250 chips, which is just over 4 big blinds. So you were the big blind and the button has joined the hand. For King 10 offsuit, we can shove it for 12 blinds, up to a maximum of 12 blinds. And so here, this is going to be a clear shove at 4 blinds, which Hero makes, and both players fold. So this is an example of Hero winning some nice chips and taking advantage of very weak play, because there are no hands here that he should limp and then fold facing such a short stack shove. Okay, King Queen will be a shove according to the strategy, and that's the end of it. Okay, next game. I can't even talk anymore. I was going to say we're in a wind tunnel and blew into my microphone. I don't know why I was going to do that. It's the most childish thing I've ever had the urge to do. But I was going to do that until I no longer possess the ability to speak. Cave Wave, how many tables do you play? Personally, when I'm playing spins, I'm usually 4 tabling. When you're starting off with a strategy, I would recommend 1 tabling. What is average time of game? I believe averaged out over a long sample. Average Spin&Go length is like, what, 6 or 7 minutes? Does anyone know the answer to that? Stick with it, says 10 minutes. I think 10 sounds a little bit long. Longest games are about 13, that's true, but some are going to end at 10:20. I would be surprised if on average is much more than 8. So that is my thought. Good question, though. And so Hero checks. And okay, we have flopped top pair, 10x or better. So, yeah, I've been waiting for this. I've been so excited about this moment when we would be playing this strategy and flop 10 pair, top pair, 10x or better. Oh, I've got to switch it to my. That's odd. It's not letting me switch to my poker strategy skin. And so we're going to ship it, guys. We ship it. He has a better 10. His queen kicker plays. Oh well. Next game. Okay, so king 9 offsuit. Is this a shove? Is this a fold? 25 blinds in the button. I think it's a shove. No. King jack offsuit is a shove. So king 9 here should. And once again, okay, so in the future we're going to get to the point where we are raising small with this hand, either 40 or 45 chips. But for now, it's just going to be a fold. 10-4 off will be a fold. Queen 10 suited will be a shove. So here we are the small blind. The button has folded. We would look up Queen 10 suited. We see we can shove it no matter what the effective stack is. Okay, this is a cool result here. Okay, if the button folds, we're in the small blind. It doesn't matter what our stack is. We only have to look. If we have an ace, a suited king, most suited connectors, Queen 4 suited, 10-8 off, we can just go ahead and ship it in. Good fold with the Jack 7 suited. 10-8 suited, I believe, is a shove here. Is this here his first mistake based on the strategy? So we are the big blind, and the small blind has joined the hand. And no, actually, we can shove it up to 12 blinds. So once again, Hero was correct. You're following the strategy very accurately. Well done, Hero. And we managed to win a flip this time, pretty sweet. So the effective stack here, even though we're very short effectively with this player, is going to be the 440 chips, or 22 big blinds that were effective with the player in the small blind. So now we'll get heads up. 3 deuce suited will be a fold. So we do not flop top pair here. We're going to check and fold. Okay, so as we'll see, in the future, this would be a spot where we'd often bet out on, if not the flop and or turn, certainly in the river we can value bet. We almost always have the best hand. But again, we're playing this as a fixed strategy, so here played this completely correctly. And this guy probably has nothing. Ace high. Ace 8, we're going to open shove. And we're going to chuck fold the 5-4. A lot of folds here on both sides. So queen deuce suited, effective stack. Now notice here that a lot of the time we don't need to calculate the effective stack exactly, okay? Here we know that it's going to be somewhere greater than 12 and less than 25, even if we don't immediately see that it's 16 or 17. So here we are the small blind, and the question is 16 blinds, queen deuce suited. Okay, we're the small blind, we have queen deuce suited, we can shove it up to 12 blinds. So here we're supposed to fold, which he correctly does. It's showing up as 2 buttons. So here king 6 offsuit as the small blind. So king 6 is a shove up to 25 blinds, so Hero is correct to shove. And the one time he gets in bad, he gets the suck out. Flop 2 pair, yes. Did we have a value push against his bet on this flop? Kelniev, I don't remember which hand that was. Oh, the 10-8. But remember, this is not, you're thinking in terms of like when you shove, uh, are better hands going to fold? Are worse hands going to call? And that is not how we are thinking, okay? In the future we will be, but for now it's following this set strategy. The general rule of thumb behind it is that it's only shoving for value. We're only shoving with the purpose of getting worse hands to call us. We're effectively never bluffing with this strategy. And a lot of the time that'll be the case, and some of the time it's not going to work out as well, but a lot of the time we will get called by worse hands following this strategy. Curti B live on Twitch, very cool. Would worse hand could call us? Draws, lower pocket pairs. You would be surprised. When we shoved 25 blinds at 10-20, and we got called by King 3 offsuit. So plenty of hands that don't make any sense to call could call. Twister length is 5 minutes on average, but there are 2-minute blind levels and antes there. I'm afraid Stars games take longer. They might, but 2-minute blind levels, that is really short. Hi, Colin, I'm from the Russian community. See your videos in poker strategy, and I have a question. I play heads up S&G. What stats optimal I can have on 10th limit? On 10th limit, I'm sorry, F1001. I'm happy to see you on here. Love the poker strategy Russians, but not sure I understand this question. What do you mean the 10th limit? I want to, in general, just open this up to any questions, comments that people have on this strategy, anything we've talked about today, calculating effective stack, assessing positions, figuring out game plans, anything you have, ideally about spins in the strategy, but no matter what it is, I will answer. So let's go ahead. I'm sure people have questions. And don't start typing in, thanks Colin, great coaching, I always appreciate that. But then the coaching's over. As soon as one person types that in, then everyone else types it in and the coaching's over. So don't type that in just yet, even though I greatly appreciate nice words, but I want to open up to all questions. Katie writes, what are we having for dinner tonight? Hopefully the turkey that you were making, Katie. Johnny16, you violated my rule. Come on, man. Get with the program. Welcome with the promo. What about hands with which you have to call all ins? So Sudaro, remember, the chart, that's a very good question, is not going to make that distinction. So let me make an example, okay? Let's say we're the big blind and the small blind has joined the hand. The small blind can have joined the hand. The reason why it's phrased, you normally don't hear someone has joined the hand, okay? It makes it sound like it's some sort of exclusive club that the small blind has now entered. But basically, that just means that the small blind has limped, he's raised, he's shoved. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we could be following this chart because we're the big blind and the small blind has limped, because the small blind has shoved. So we're going to call all in for 25 blinds with the same range of hands that we would 3-bet shove for 25 blinds. Now, you might say, well, but people don't normally do that, and that's true. But again, one of the handicaps that the creators of the strategy must have had is you don't want to have a million tables, okay? So they managed to condense this information to a limited number of tables, and that'll be a future adjustment, making the distinction between being able to re-raise all in and being able to call all in, which is what David Skalansky called the gap concept. But very good question. If Katie is cooking, who loads the dishwasher? Hopefully Wilbur, the dog. More questions. Come on, we've got 3 minutes left. And I can't end these early, because I enjoy too much. I know in poker strategy to be like, Colin, why are you ending the coaching early? So somebody has to come up with a question. If you guys want to get out of here, somebody better come up with a question. Oh man, he would love to lick the plates clean. Katie, are you making something specifically for him? K-Verve asks, what is the best way to improve on spins? Excellent question, K-Verve. Thank you, sir. So the best way to improve is, we're basically providing you at Poker Strategy with a way to follow these lessons and basically improve that way. And as you get more, if you mean how to improve, like once you're ready playing a strategy that involves, using your discretion and not following charts, then the best way to improve is going to be to learn ranges very well. in particular with software like Hold'em Resources and ICMizer, learning optimal ranges to open shove and 3-bet shove, as well as playing around with new things like open limping, experiment with open limping in the small blind, open limping on the button, and not being afraid to experiment. And also, when you play a good player, look and see what they're doing, and try to break down their game, break down their stats, and learn from good players as much as possible. It's a very good question. Okay. So that pretty much takes it. Any more questions, I will definitely answer them. And if not, next week we are going to move on to the next lesson. So, yeah, I think we did pretty good today, guys. Don't you? I think we did pretty good. So, Johnny16, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Have a nice time to you as well. Happy choice. Thank you, good sir. Appreciate you tuning in. Glad you like the coaching. Kellynev, it was great to see you on here. I don't think I've seen you before on one of these coachings, and it was really nice to have you on today's. Same with anyone new on this coaching. Really nice to see new faces on here. If both button and SB go all in, still the same charts, then we would treat that as I'll show you the table we would use in that case. We would use the table, we are the big blind and the button has joined the hand. That would be the table we would use. Good question. Citadel, awesome. Tony PMM, thank you, sir. Glad you enjoyed the MTT hand reading section. Next coaching, we will continue on with spins. I believe next week is post flop. Yes, lesson 2, post flop play. So I will go over the post flop component to our beginner spin and go strategy. It was easy. I knew he had a case. See, that's the thing. A lot of times, like, people call it hands, and it's like magic. And a lot of the time, it's just basic deductive reasoning. And I was pretty proud that a large number of us got that one. We didn't go to showdown, but I really feel that one in my blood. Will that be beyond shove fold next week? Yes, it'll be beyond shove fold. We will talk about a more detailed approach to post flop play beyond shove fold. So, yeah, I think we're going to end it. So good luck, everyone playing spins. And let me know how the strategy works for you if you go ahead and test it out. Again, simple strategy. It's not perfect, but it's a very well-constructed way to get started at Spin&Goes, and a lot more powerful than it may appear at first glance. So I think very well done by those who put it together as a way to get into Spin&Goes. K-Verve, beating threes, yes, in the future, absolutely. That will be something that we get to at least that level. So there we go. Thanks very much, everyone. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. It was great to see new faces, familiar faces. Have a great week at the tables, away from the tables. And I will see you guys next Wednesday at the same time. So have a great week, everybody. And catch you next time.